The dogs began barking just after midnight. At first, nobody in the nearby farming towns paid attention. Strange noises were common in the mountains after dark. Wind moved through the trees in unsettling ways, and distant animal cries often echoed across the valleys. But the barking did not stop. It continued for hours. Then, suddenly, every sound disappeared at once. No dogs. No insects. No wind. Only silence. The next morning, a milk delivery driver arrived at the isolated mountain village of Elmridge, and immediately stopped his truck in the middle of the road. The village was empty. Doors stood open. Breakfasts remained half-eaten on tables. Laundry still swayed gently outside homes in the cold morning air. But every single person was gone. Over 300 villagers had vanished overnight without leaving behind a single body. And to this day, nobody knows where they went. Before we begin, thank you for spending a few minutes of your day here. Tonight's story isn't one you hear often, it's the kind that quietly disappears into history, even though it never should have been forgotten. If stories like this stay with you, feel free to subscribe and join us for the next one. The village of Elmridge sat deep within a remote mountain region, surrounded by thick forests and steep cliffs. Winters there were brutal, often cutting the town off from the outside world for weeks at a time. Most people living there had known each other for generations. Farmers, hunters, woodcutters. Families who believed the mountains protected them from the chaos of the outside world. The village barely appeared on maps. There were no major roads leading in or out. No train station. No nearby city for miles. Life moved slowly there. Quietly. Predictably. Until the night everything disappeared. Among the villagers was 17-year-old Clara Whitmore, the daughter of the town doctor. Clara dreamed of leaving Elmridge someday. She loved books about distant cities and often complained that the village felt trapped in another century. Her father disagreed completely. Places like this survive because people stay, he told her often. But Clara noticed strange things about Elmridge that outsiders ignored. The villagers avoided the forest after sunset. Children were warned never to whistle at night. And every year during the first week of winter, the church bell rang once at midnight for reasons nobody explained. When Clara asked about it, the older villagers always changed the subject. 3 days before the disappearance, a violent snowstorm swept across the mountains. Power lines failed repeatedly. Dense fog rolled through the forests even during daylight hours. Several villagers reported hearing strange noises outside their homes late at night. Not footsteps. Not animals. Something else. A low humming sound echoing through the trees. Then came the first disappearance. An elderly hunter named Walter Green failed to return home after checking his traps near the forest edge. Search teams found his rifle abandoned in the snow. No footprints led away from it. Only a long trail carved through the snow as though something heavy had been dragged into the woods. The search ended early when darkness fell. Nobody wanted to remain near the forest after sunset. The following evening, Clara awoke to the sound of voices outside her bedroom window. At first she thought villagers were arguing in the street. But when she looked outside, the road was empty. The voices continued anyway. Soft whispers drifting through the fog. Dozens of them. all speaking too quietly to understand. Her bedroom suddenly became freezing cold. Then, somewhere far across the village, the church bell rang once. Clara's father rushed into her room immediately afterward looking terrified. "Stay inside tonight," he warned her. "For any reason?" "For any reason." It was the first time Clara had ever seen fear in his face. That same night, the dogs began barking. Every animal in the village became restless. Horses kicked violently inside barns. Windows rattled despite the complete absence of wind. Villagers stepped outside carrying lanterns, searching nervously through the thick fog covering the streets. Then someone screamed near the church. By the time others reached the area, nobody was there. Only footprints. Hundreds of footprints leading toward the forest. Not away from it. Toward it. Around midnight, several villagers claimed they saw lights moving between the trees beyond the edge of town. Tall shapes appeared briefly inside the fog before vanishing again. Some witnesses described them as people carrying lanterns. Others insisted the figures were too tall to be human. Clara watched from her upstairs window as villagers gathered anxiously in the streets below. Then the church bell rang again. Once. Louder this time. Immediately afterward, every light in the village went dark. The entire town disappeared into blackness. Clara heard her father locking every door in the house. She heard distant shouting outside. Then came the humming sound again. Low. Deep. Almost vibrating beneath the ground itself. The whispers returned next. Closer now. So close they seemed to surround the house completely. Clara pulled her blanket tightly around herself, while footsteps moved slowly outside her bedroom door. But her father was downstairs. And nobody else should have been inside the house. The footsteps stopped directly outside her room. Then silence. A long, unnatural silence. Until suddenly the front door downstairs burst open. Her father screamed. And then everything went quiet. The next thing Clara remembered was sunlight. Cold morning light shining through her bedroom window. She sat upright immediately. The house was empty. Her father was gone. Outside, the village stood completely abandoned. Food still rested on tables. Fires still burned weakly inside fireplaces. Clocks ticked normally on walls. But every person had vanished. No bodies. No blood. No signs of struggle. Only silence. When authorities finally reached Elmridge later that afternoon, they assumed the villagers had evacuated during the storm. But the evidence made no sense. Cars remained parked in driveways. Money and valuables were untouched inside homes. Winter coats still hung beside doors. It looked as though the entire population had simply stopped existing mid-movement. Search teams combed the surrounding forests for weeks. Nothing was ever found. No mass graves. No tracks leading away from town. No explanation. Only one strange detail disturbed investigators most. Throughout the village, nearly every clock had stopped at exactly 12:17 a.m. Clara became the only known survivor connected to the disappearance. But even she could never explain what happened that night. Doctors blamed trauma and exhaustion for her fragmented memories. Some believed the villagers fled together during mass panic. Others suggested secret government involvement. A few claimed toxic gas from the mountains may have caused hallucinations. But none of those theories explained where over 300 people disappeared to, or why nobody was ever seen again. Years later, Elmridge became known as one of the strangest unsolved disappearances in modern history. The village still stands abandoned deep within the mountains. Most buildings remain exactly as they were found. Empty plates still sit on dining tables. Children's toys remain scattered across bedroom floors. And according to hikers who pass near the area after dark, the church bell still rings sometimes. Once. Always at midnight. An old forest ranger once gave an interview shortly before his death. He had joined the original search party decades earlier. When asked whether he believed the villagers were murdered, he shook his head slowly. "No," he whispered. "They were taken." The interviewer laughed nervously. "Taken by who?" The ranger stared silently toward the mountains for several seconds before answering. "I don't think the village was supposed to be there." Even now, locals avoid the forests surrounding Elmridge after sunset. Some claim strange lights still move through the trees during winter storms. Others report hearing whispers deep in the fog where no people should exist. And every few years, another traveler disappears somewhere near the abandoned village without explanation. No witnesses. No bodies. No answers. Only silence waiting beneath the trees.